The outer rim of the galaxy was not kind to wanderers. Stars burned faint and cold, distant suns that cast only a faint glow on the endless void. Among the drifting debris of abandoned stations and shattered ships, Aiden Cross moved with the ease of someone who had long ago made peace with solitude. His boots clanged lightly on the metal walkways of a derelict mining station, and his eyes scanned every corridor for salvageable tech. The place smelled of rust, burned circuits, and stale air. But to Aiden, it smelled like opportunity. He had learned early that the galaxy rewarded the patient and the observant. Every scrap of metal, every broken circuit, every half-destroyed power core could become something useful. He had repaired engines, thought beyond repair, and pieced together systems that others had long abandoned. That was how he survived. That was how he thrived. Alone, without allegiances, without rules except his own, Aiden moved through the station like a shadow, careful and precise. It was in the deepest sector of the station that he saw it, a shape unlike any he had ever encountered. Part of it lay crumpled against a wall, sparking faintly as exposed circuits shivered with dying power. The armor was humanoid, but sleek, unlike anything in human or merchant designs. It gleamed faintly even in the dim light. But a deep crack ran across the chest plate, metal torn and scorched. Curiosity pulled him closer. Engineers like him didn't ignore anomalies. Tools clinking at his belt, Aiden crouched beside the fallen suit. He expected no response, yet something about the craftiness of the armor called to him. He traced a gloved hand along the crack. Whoever or whatever had worn it had been in a fight, one far more violent than anything he had faced. Sparks flickered from damaged circuits, as if the armor itself sighed. Then he heard a faint sound, almost a whisper, and froze. The armor shuddered. Inside, a faint pulse of life throbbed. Aiden blinked, startled. "Alive?" he muttered, his voice echoing slightly in the empty chamber. The pulse came again, stronger, and he realized the pilot inside was still conscious, though weak. Aiden's instincts took over. He had dealt with humans trapped in damaged suits before. Carefully, he activated his portable diagnostic device, sending a stream of soft lights across the armor. Warnings flashed: critical structural failure, low energy, internal vitals unstable. The pilot inside was alive, barely, and the suit was failing fast. Without a second thought, Aiden began his work. He cleared debris, replaced broken panels, rerouted circuits, and patched the crack with a combination of alloy and welding gel. Sparks flew as he worked, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cold of space around the station. The hours passed unnoticed. He hummed quietly to himself, an old habit, as his hands moved with the precision of a man entirely in his element. When he paused to catch his breath, he finally got a better look at the pilot. She was not human in the typical sense. Not entirely. Her features were sharp but graceful, her hair a cascade of dark strands that fell messily across the armor's inner helmet. Even unconscious, she radiated strength, and yet there was a fragile quality about her, a vulnerability that made Aiden's chest tighten in ways he didn't fully understand. "Hang on," he whispered, tightening a support brace. "You're going to be okay." Hours passed, yet the station remained silent except for the hiss of welding tools and the occasional flicker of failing lights. Aiden worked tirelessly, guided by instinct and an unspoken respect for the life he had stumbled upon. It was not just about repair. It was about preservation. By the time dawn would have broken, if there were suns to illuminate this forsaken station, the crack was stabilized. Systems hummed softly as power flowed evenly through the armor. The pilot stirred, her movements deliberate but slow. Aiden stepped back, holding his hands up, unsure if she would attack or speak. Her eyes opened. They were a sharp, intense blue that seemed to look right through him, assessing him, weighing him. Aiden felt a shiver run down his spine. "Who are you?" he asked cautiously, his voice softer than he intended. The woman inside the armor regarded him silently for a long moment. Then she nodded once. A simple gesture, but it carried the weight of gratitude, and something else, something almost imperceptible. Acknowledgement of skill. "I owe you my life," she said softly, her voice firm yet melodic, and Aiden realized she spoke perfectly, without hesitation or fear. He found himself searching her face for more clues, but she offered none. No name, no origin, no explanation. Just a quiet strength that demanded respect. "I just fixed the suit," Aiden said, shrugging lightly, trying to mask the awe in his tone. "You could have been dead if I hadn't." He stopped himself, realizing the absurdity of speaking to someone who clearly had experienced battles far beyond his understanding. "You repaired more than the suit," she said simply, her gaze unwavering. "You preserved a life." There was no arrogance in her tone, no sense of superiority, only truth. Before he could ask another question, she moved, testing her repaired armor. The mechanics responded perfectly to her touch. She flexed her fingers, then lifted her head, looking around the station as if evaluating her surroundings. Finally, without another word, she activated the armor's propulsion system, giving a faint hum that made the floor vibrate beneath Aiden's boots. "You're leaving," he said, a pang of disappointment in his voice. She inclined her head, a subtle gesture that conveyed more than words could. "I have places to be," she said. Then, almost as an afterthought, she added, "and enemies to face." Before he could respond, she disappeared down a side corridor, vanishing into the shadows like a wraith. Aiden stood frozen, staring after her. Alone, the station felt emptier than before. Questions flooded his mind. Who was she? Why was she wearing such advanced armor? And why, in the vast galaxy full of dangers, had fate brought her to him? He did not know the answer. He only knew that the brief encounter had left a mark he could not ignore. Even as he returned to scavenging, even as he repaired old drones and reclaimed old parts, he found his thoughts drifting back to the woman in the suit. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen, resilient, graceful, dangerous in ways he could only guess at. Days passed, and rumors began to swirl in the outer rim. A mysterious armored figure had been seen near skirmishes, striking swiftly and vanishing without a trace. Aiden paid no attention, assuming it was coincidence. Yet deep down he wondered if somehow unknowingly his life had been tied to someone far greater than he could imagine. And in the depths of space, among enemies who never slept and forces that ruled entire systems with iron fists, Queen Seraphina, unknown to him, planned her next move. The armor he repaired would carry her through battles that could determine the fate of billions. But for now, Aiden Cross remained blissfully unaware of the power he had touched, of the queen whose life he had saved. All he knew was that somewhere in the darkness of space, he had glimpsed something extraordinary, and that glimpse would change everything. For Aiden, the galaxy remained vast, lonely, and full of opportunity. Yet, somewhere in its endless stretches, a queen had awakened, and a new chapter in the story of humanity and the universe was quietly beginning. Life in the Outer Rim did not slow down for Aiden Cross, though he tried to return to his quiet routines. He scavenged the remains of derelict stations, repaired broken drones, and traded salvage for credits that barely kept him fed. But ever since the night he repaired the mysterious armor, something had shifted. He could not shake the memory of her. Graceful, silent, powerful. And sometimes, when he was deep in thought, he felt the faint pull of her presence, though he knew it was impossible. It started with small signs. First, he noticed shadows moving oddly on the edge of his vision as he worked in his tiny repair bay. Tools would vanish, only to reappear neatly arranged on a different shelf. Systems that were barely functional seemed to stabilize on their own. At first, he told himself it was his imagination. Outer Rim space stations were lonely places, and long hours with nothing but mechanical sounds could play tricks on the mind. Then the visitors began. They came quietly, dressed in unremarkable travel suits but carrying an air of authority. Aidan could feel their scrutiny even before they spoke. "You repair things, unusual things," one man said, his tone casual but sharp. "A suit, perhaps? Or something alive?" Aidan frowned, adjusting the welding mask on his head. "I fix what I find," he replied cautiously. "Doesn't matter if it's a drone, a ship, or an old mech." "I don't ask questions." The man's eyes narrowed, and he left without another word. But Aidan could feel the weight of his gaze linger long after the figure disappeared. Soon after, more visitors arrived. Some were diplomats, some soldiers, and some whose intent he could not guess. All of them asked questions about the same thing: a queen, a suit, and the outer rim. Aidan, stubborn and unaware, answered cautiously, but honestly. He told them nothing of the repair. He had no idea why these strangers cared so much. All the while, the woman in the armor lingered in his mind. He began noticing small traces of her influence on his environment, subtle improvements he couldn't explain, systems working smoother than he thought possible. It was as if her presence had lingered even after she left. One night, when the twin moons of a nearby planet hung low and cold in the sky, she returned. Aidan did not see her approach. One moment he was calibrating a damaged drone. The next, a shadow moved across the bay. He looked up, and there she was, armor intact, helmet open, her hair messy but striking in the dim light. She looked at him with those piercing blue eyes, assessing, calculating, and curious. "You've kept busy," she said softly, almost like a statement rather than a question. "I guess," Aidan replied, unsure what else to say. "I've been repairing, trading, surviving." He glanced at her armor. "The suit's still working, better than before, actually." She tilted her head slightly, studying him. "You are talented. Few could have done what you did." Aidan shrugged, trying to hide the pride swelling in his chest. "I've fixed worse," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. Something about her made even casual words feel heavy. They sat in silence for a while, the hum of machinery filling the air. Then she began speaking, not about her identity, but about battles and strategies, about machines and systems he had only dreamed of repairing. She spoke in fragments, never revealing the whole picture, but enough to intrigue him. "I see the flaws," she said, pointing to a small energy core. "The redirection lines are inefficient. They'll overload if stressed again." Aidan blinked, impressed. Most engineers wouldn't notice that without testing. How? Experience. Observation. He wanted to ask her so many questions, but he hesitated. There was something dangerous in her tone, something that suggested consequences for careless words. Yet, at the same time, he felt a strange comfort, a rare trust forming in the silence between them. Days passed like this. She returned sporadically, always observing, always guiding subtly. Aidan taught her about small engineering tricks, improvisations on old tech, ways to extend the life of machines beyond their design. She, in turn, shared stories of battles lost and won, of betrayal and loyalty, though never giving her name or rank. Each story was a puzzle piece, a glimpse of a larger war raging somewhere he could not see. Aidan began noticing other changes in himself. He was no longer just a scavenger or an engineer. He was alert, cautious, aware of dangers he could not yet identify. He began to recognize patterns in visitors, learn how to avoid unnecessary conflict, and adapt his tools to anticipate problems he had never faced. One evening, while repairing a small drone in the corner of his bay, he felt a sudden vibration in the floor. The station's alarm system, old and unreliable, flashed red. He froze. Movement outside, quick and precise, and then voices speaking a language he did not recognize. The Queen, he realized immediately, was near. He didn't know how, but instinct told him to follow her lead. She appeared, moving with fluid speed, signaling him to stay behind. In moments, they were navigating through narrow maintenance tunnels, dodging unseen agents. He saw her skill, her command, in ways he had never imagined. She was no ordinary warrior. Every step she took was precise, every decision calculated. Aiden struggled to keep up, relying on his knowledge of machines and his own instincts to stay out of harm's way. Finally, they reached a hidden escape corridor. She paused, looking back at him, and for the first time, he saw something more than a stranger or a fellow survivor in her eyes. It was recognition, respect, and something he could not name. "You should not have been here," she said quietly. "They would have taken you." I didn't know," he stammered, heart racing. "I just fixed the suit." Her gaze softened slightly, though still firm. "That act saved me. You do not yet understand the danger, but your skill, your courage, it matters more than you know." Aiden swallowed, unsure what to say. He wanted to ask about the Queen, about the war, about everything, but the words stuck in his throat. Instead, he nodded. "Rest," she said, finally moving toward the corridor leading out of the station.
"I will return. There is more for you to learn."
And then she was gone, leaving him alone in the dim glow of his repair bay. Yet the sense of anticipation lingered, stronger than ever. Aiden realized that life, as he had known it, was over. He was no longer just a solitary engineer. He was now part of something larger, a story far beyond his understanding. In the days that followed, Aiden began noticing patterns he had missed before. Strange signals in the data streams of the stations, subtle anomalies in the behavior of passing ships, and traces of advanced technology moving through sectors he frequented. It was as if the Queen's presence had left a ripple through the galaxy, and he was beginning to see the edges of it. He continued his work, repairing and trading, but now every action had weight. Every choice could draw attention. Every success or failure mattered in ways he could not yet measure. The Queen's quiet guidance had changed him. He had become sharper, faster, and more aware, and with every passing day, he felt the pull of destiny tightening around him. A week later, a new threat emerged. Coalition scouts, sleek and heavily armed, arrived at the station. They questioned every inhabitant, examined every corner, and even scanned the systems he had repaired. Aiden kept his head low, pretending to be just another scavenger, but inside he knew the Queen's influence had reached even here. He did not see her that night, but he felt her in every shadow, in every warning he received from instinct alone. The encounter had taught him more than engineering. It had taught him observation, patience, and courage. And though he did not yet know her identity, he understood that his life had been altered in ways that would echo across the stars. By the end of the week, the scouts departed, having found nothing of value. Aiden let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The station was silent again, but the emptiness no longer felt lonely. He felt connected, part of something larger, a thread in a tapestry far greater than himself. And somewhere, in the darkness between stars, the Queen prepared for her next move, unaware that the man who had saved her life and repaired her armor was quietly becoming a force of his own, ready to face dangers he had never imagined. The bond between them was subtle, invisible to the galaxy, but it was growing stronger every day. And soon the mysteries of identity, allegiance, and power would collide, forcing Aiden to confront the truth of who she was and the part he would play in a war that could shape the fate of billions. The day began like any other in the Outer Rim. Cold, distant stars glinting faintly against the blackness of space, the metallic scent of abandoned stations lingering in the air. But Aiden Cross knew deep down that nothing about this day would be ordinary. His instincts, sharpened by the Queen's subtle guidance over the past weeks, were restless. Something was coming. He had spent the morning repairing a damaged hover drone, its circuitry fried from old energy surges. His hands moved with practiced precision, soldering, rewiring, and testing each system. Yet, even as he worked, he could not shake the feeling of eyes on him. He glanced around the station, empty corridors reflecting faint lights. Nothing. Yet the sense persisted. Then the alarms went off. Sharp, piercing, impossible to ignore. Aiden's heart jumped. The station's sensors picked up multiple fast-moving ships entering the outer docking bay. He knew immediately. These were not scavengers or traders. The signature readings matched those of Coalition assault ships. Their reputation was notorious. Merciless, well-equipped, and efficient at hunting down targets considered dangerous. Panic did not overtake him. He had been trained to survive, to react quickly. His mind raced, evaluating exits, repairs, and weapons he could use to defend himself, or create diversions. But before he could act, she was there. Serafina appeared from the shadows, armor gleaming even under the station's flickering lights. Her presence was commanding, her movements fluid and precise. She gave him a single, sharp nod, an unspoken order to follow. No words were needed. Instinctively, Aiden obeyed, letting her lead him through a labyrinth of maintenance tunnels. "Who are they?" he asked, his voice low. "They are scouts from the Coalition," she replied, her tone calm but urgent. "They seek me. You must not be seen." Aiden's mind raced. He had heard of the Coalition in whispers, stories of rulers and factions crushed under their military might. And now, he realized, he was caught in the middle. The weight of the moment pressed on him, yet a strange confidence settled in his chest. He had faced dangers before, and with her leading, he knew he had a chance. They moved quickly, silently. Serafina's knowledge of the station's hidden passages was flawless. She paused only to ensure his safety, glancing back to make sure he kept up. Aiden marveled at her skill, at the precision in every movement, every decision. She was unlike anyone he had ever encountered. Then, in a narrow chamber lit by a single overhead light, they were cornered. Coalition agents poured in, weapons raised, surrounding them on all sides. Aiden froze, heart pounding. But Serafina did not hesitate. With a swift motion, she activated her armor's systems, and a pulse of energy surged outward, knocking the nearest agents off balance. Her movements were a blend of elegance and lethal efficiency. Aiden realized in that moment that she was not just a skilled fighter. She was a leader, a strategist, someone whose presence alone could turn the tide of conflict. He wanted to ask her name, to understand everything about her, but there was no time. Survival came first. Using his engineering skills, Aiden began manipulating the environment. Panels sparked, conduits rerouted power, and lights flickered, creating distractions. Serafina moved with him, coordinating their actions seamlessly. Together, they turned the small chamber into a defensive maze, buying themselves precious seconds. Finally, they reached a secure corridor leading to the station's lower decks. Aiden's mind was racing with questions. Who was she? Why was the Coalition after her? And most importantly, how had a chance encounter led him into the heart of such danger? It was then, in the brief moments of quiet as they ran, that she revealed herself. "I am Serafina," she said, her voice firm but not loud. "Queen Serafina of the Lyria Dominion." Aiden stopped dead, staring at her. The weight of her words settled over him like a physical force. The Queen, the mysterious figure he had admired, guided, and now fought alongside, was the ruler of a galaxy-spanning realm. His mind reeled. The stories he had heard in whispers, the legends of her courage and cunning, were real. And she had trusted him, a lone engineer, with her life. I don't know what to say," he stammered, feeling both awe and fear. "You need not say anything," she replied. "You saved me when it mattered most. That is enough, for now." They moved again, faster, knowing that Coalition reinforcements would arrive soon. Aiden's admiration for her grew, tempered by the realization of the stakes. This was no longer about survival or curiosity. It was about loyalty, strategy, and courage under fire. As they navigated the station, Serafina explained in fragments the larger situation. The coalition had grown powerful, seeking to control or destroy any faction that opposed their rule. The Lyria Dominion, her people, had resisted fiercely, but the losses had been heavy. Every battle, every decision carried consequences that stretched across light years. Aiden listened, absorbing the weight of her words. He realized that his repair of her armor had not just saved her life. It had influenced the course of an interstellar conflict. The responsibility was enormous, and yet he did not feel fear. He felt purpose. Their escape was not easy. Coalition ships descended on the station's outer bay, firing energy pulses that tore through metal and rock. Serafina's armor protected her, deflecting attacks with precision. Aiden worked quickly, rerouting power to stabilizers, repairing damage in real time, and even modifying small drones to serve as distractions. Every skill he had honed in solitude now became a weapon in the larger battle. Finally, they reached an old shuttle, hidden in a maintenance bay. Serafina's knowledge of the vessel was precise, her hands moving over controls with instinctive familiarity. Aiden followed, assisting where he could, repairing minor faults, and ensuring they could escape. The shuttle lifted off just as the coalition forces closed in, the station a blur of lights and explosions behind them. Aiden felt a mixture of exhilaration and relief. He had survived, yes, but more than that, he had fought alongside a queen, contributing to the survival of a leader whose influence could shape the galaxy. As they traveled through the void, Serafina finally allowed herself a moment of rest. The shuttle hummed softly, shields holding, engines steady. Aiden sat across from her, still trying to comprehend everything. "You are different," she said after a long silence. "Most would have frozen, panicked, or fled. You adapted. You fought."
"You thought I just did what I could," Aiden replied.
"You made it seem possible." She smiled faintly, a rare softness in her gaze. "You made it possible. Do not underestimate your role, Aiden. What you do matters, not just to me, but to all who follow this cause." For the first time, Aiden felt the weight of his own importance. He had lived a life of quiet survival, hidden in the shadows of abandoned stations. But now he was part of something larger, something that could alter the course of history. And with that realization came a strange sense of belonging. The days that followed were intense. They traveled from system to system, avoiding coalition patrols, securing resources, and planning the next moves in the ongoing conflict. Aiden's skills became invaluable, repairing ships mid-flight, improvising weapons, and creating strategies to outmaneuver larger forces. He felt alive in a way he never had before, his mind sharp, his heart steady, and his purpose clear. Serafina, for her part, began to trust him more openly. She shared fragments of her past, stories of battles fought and lost, of allies betrayed and victories hard won. Yet she remained cautious, never revealing everything at once. Every conversation was a careful dance, building trust and understanding. And slowly, Aiden began to see not just a queen, but a woman of remarkable strength and vision. One evening, as they docked at a hidden outpost for repairs, Aiden finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. Why me? Why trust me with everything? Serafina looked at him thoughtfully, her eyes reflecting the dim glow of the outpost lights. Because you see the world as it is, not as it should be. You act without fear of titles, without prejudice, and you care about doing what is right. That is rare. That is why you matter. Aiden felt a swell of pride, tempered by humility. But he had never sought recognition or reward. He had only wanted to survive. Yet now, survival was no longer enough. He had a purpose, a role, and a connection that went beyond simple existence. As the night deepened, he realized that his life had changed forever. The queen he had saved, guided, and now fought alongside was no longer a distant figure of legend. She was real, and their fates were intertwined. Together they would face dangers that spanned the galaxy, relying on skill, trust, and courage, and Aiden knew, with a certainty he had never felt before, that he would not falter. He would fight, repair, and protect. For the queen, for the people she led, and for the part of himself that had finally found meaning in the vast emptiness of space. The galaxy was dangerous, unpredictable, and merciless, but together they had the power to change its course. The cold void of space stretched endlessly before them, dotted with distant stars that seemed to watch silently as if the universe itself was holding its breath. Aiden Cross sat in the shuttle's small cockpit, checking systems again and again, despite knowing they had already been repaired countless times. Beside him, Queen Seraphina adjusted her armor, her movements precise, deliberate, and calm. She was preparing for the battle that would decide not only her fate, but the fate of countless worlds under Coalition control. Aiden's heart pounded in his chest. He had trained for emergencies, repaired countless machines, and faced threats before, but nothing compared to what awaited them. This was not scavenging, not patching broken drones. It was war on a scale that dwarfed anything he had ever imagined. Yet, beneath the anxiety, he felt a steady resolve. He had saved her once. Now, he would fight alongside her to shape the galaxy's future. The plan was daring, almost reckless. The Coalition flagship, a massive warship bristling with weapons and shielded by layers of defense systems, held the key to the enemy's control over the Outer Rim. Seraphina intended to strike at the heart of their power. Aiden's role was crucial. He was to oversee repairs and improvisations in real time, ensuring their small fleet could outmaneuver and outlast a much larger, better-armed force. As they approached the Coalition fleet, Aiden's hands moved over the controls with practiced precision. He calibrated shields, adjusted propulsion, and monitored energy outputs. Every system he touched seemed to respond instantly, as if sensing the urgency of the moment. He was no longer the solitary scavenger of forgotten stations. He was a strategist, a vital part of a mission that could change the course of history. Seraphina's voice came through the intercom, calm and commanding. All units maintain formation. Focus on disabling the flagship. Aiden, prepare the auxiliary drones. We will need every advantage. Aiden nodded, though she could not see him. He activated the drones, small but powerful machines modified with his own hands. They buzzed to life, ready to carry out complex maneuvers, distractions, surveillance, and even offensive strikes against weak points in the flagship's hull. His mind raced with calculations, adjustments, and contingency plans. Every action mattered. Failure was not an option. The flagship loomed ahead, immense and imposing. Its hull was armored, energy shields glimmering with the power of countless reactors. But Aiden had found vulnerabilities, subtle flaws in the design that could be exploited. He relayed instructions to Seraphina and her fleet, coordinating attacks with precision. His knowledge of engineering became a weapon, and every calculated move brought them closer to victory. As the battle began, chaos erupted. Energy pulses lit up the darkness. Ships maneuvered with breathtaking speed, and explosions rocked the void. Seraphina moved like a force of nature, her armor deflecting attacks and allowing her to command with unmatched authority. She was every bit the queen he had imagined, yet more. Her skill, courage, and decisiveness were awe-inspiring. Aiden worked tirelessly, repairing damaged ships mid-flight, rerouting power, and guiding drones to exploit weaknesses. His hands were steady despite the adrenaline, his mind clear despite the danger. Every choice was critical, and every success carried weight. He felt a strange exhilaration. He was finally using his abilities to their fullest, and the results were immediate and undeniable. The flagship reacted to their assault, unleashing volleys of energy that threatened to overwhelm the smaller fleet. But Aiden anticipated their moves, redirecting power and adjusting formations to minimize losses. His ingenuity allowed Serafina's forces to stay in the fight, striking precisely where it mattered most. At one critical moment, the flagship's shields faltered. Serafina seized the opportunity, directing the fleet to focus fire on the exposed systems. Aiden guided drones into the breach, sabotaging critical circuits and creating confusion among the enemy ranks. The flagship shuddered under the combined assault, and Aiden realized that victory, though not guaranteed, was within reach. Serafina moved through the battlefield with purpose, her presence a beacon for her fleet. She coordinated attacks, protected vulnerable units, and inspired those around her. Aiden watched her, admiration and respect deepening. He had repaired her armor once, and now he fought beside her, ensuring she could fulfill her role as a leader. Together, they were a force greater than the sum of their parts. The flagship retaliated, targeting Serafina directly. Aiden saw the energy blasts heading her way and acted instantly. He rerouted power to enhance her armor's deflective capabilities, absorbing the brunt of the attack. The shields held and she continued her assault, undeterred. Aiden felt a surge of pride. His skills had directly contributed to her survival and effectiveness in battle. Minutes stretched into an eternity as the fight raged on. Drones started between ships, shields flared, and weapons discharged in controlled chaos. Aiden's focus never wavered, his mind calculating every possibility, his hands working with mechanical precision. He was no longer a bystander, he was a participant, a key player in the unfolding history of the galaxy. Finally, the flagship began to falter, its hull breached, systems failing one by one, the once mighty ship groaning under the strain of relentless assault. Serafina directed the final strike, and with Aiden's coordination, the flagship's core was disabled. A wave of silence followed, broken only by the hum of surviving ships and the soft crackle of damaged systems. Victory, hard-fought and exacting, was theirs. Aiden leaned back, exhaustion washing over him. He had survived, and more importantly, he had played a pivotal role in turning the tide of battle. Serafina approached, armor scratched but intact, her expression one of quiet satisfaction. She looked at him, and for the first time, the weight of her gratitude was evident. "You did it," she said, voice calm but filled with meaning. "You were the key to this victory. Without you, we could not have succeeded."
Aiden shook his head, disbelief in his eyes. "I
just repaired, guided, and tried not to fail," he said. "You did more than that," she replied firmly. "You trusted yourself, adapted, and acted when it mattered. That is what made the difference. You are not just an engineer, Aiden. You are a force in your own right." For the first time, Aiden felt the full weight of his transformation. He had gone from a solitary scavenger to a vital participant in a galaxy-defining conflict. His skills, courage, and ingenuity had not only saved a queen, but had shaped the outcome of a battle that would echo across star systems. The fleet regrouped, tending to damaged ships and rescuing survivors. Serafina addressed her forces, her voice strong and commanding, inspiring hope and determination. Aiden watched from nearby, feeling a profound sense of connection to the cause, to the Queen, and to something far larger than himself. In the days that followed, the Lyria Dominion began consolidating its strength, reclaiming territory lost to the Coalition and forging alliances with other factions. Aiden continued to serve, not out of duty, but out of choice. He had found purpose, camaraderie, and a cause worth fighting for. Serafina and Aiden spent long hours strategizing, repairing, and planning for the future. Their bond deepened, built on mutual respect, trust, and the shared experience of battle. He understood her burdens, the weight of leadership, and the courage required to face impossible odds. And she, in turn, recognized his loyalty, intelligence, and unwavering courage. One quiet evening, as they surveyed the stars from a quiet outpost, Serafina placed a hand on his shoulder. "You have changed," she said softly. "Not just the outcome of battles, but the lives of those around you, and even me. I owe you more than you know." Aiden smiled faintly, feeling the truth of her words. "I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because it was right, because I could." She nodded, her gaze steady and unwavering. "That is why you matter. That is why we succeed. The galaxy remained dangerous, full of threats and uncertainties." But for the first time, Aiden felt a sense of certainty within himself. He was no longer just surviving. He was contributing, shaping, and protecting. And he was not alone. As the stars stretched endlessly before them, Aiden realized that his life had transformed completely. The solitary engineer who had repaired a mysterious suit of armor had become a vital force in a galaxy at war. He had faced danger, discovered purpose, and forged a bond with a queen whose courage and leadership inspired all who followed her. Together they looked toward the future, uncharted, unpredictable, but filled with potential. The coalition had been challenged, the Lyria Dominion strengthened, and the threads of fate woven anew. Aiden knew that battles would come, challenges would rise, and the universe would test them again. But he also knew this: as long as he stood beside Serafina, he would face whatever came with courage, skill, and unwavering resolve. The battle was won, but the war for the galaxy's future was just beginning. And in that war, Aiden Cross had found his place, a beacon of ingenuity and courage, a testament to the power of one person to change everything.